The U.S. has approved a request by Denmark and the Netherlands to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the transfer could go ahead once Ukrainian pilots have completed their training. Ukrainian officials now don't expect to be able to deploy the aircraft before the end of the year, despite Kyiv's claim that they would be a game changer in its counteroffensive against Russian forces. And let's go now to Frank Ledvig. He is a senior lecturer in strategic studies at Portsmouth University and a former UK military intelligence officer. Thank you so much for joining us here on DW News. So we just heard there, it looks like Ukraine is finally getting the F-16 fighter jets that it's been asking for. How big a difference do you think that this move could make for Ukraine on the battlefield?
Good morning, Sarah. The answer is none this year. This is a question really of expectation management. It's not going to be a game changer. The Ukrainians may have a squadron in operational service, which is to say on the line, probably by March or so next year, and they'll build their force throughout 2024 if everything goes well. So it won't be a game changer. It's another weapon in their arsenal and an effective one, but it will make no significant change in the overall operational situation until late next year at the earliest.
Okay. And in the meantime, I'd like to ask you if you can address what is currently happening, what we're currently seeing, because according to reporting by the Washington Post, the U.S. intelligence community has revised its assessment of Ukraine's counteroffensive, saying that it now believes Kyiv will fail to reach its key goal. I'm wondering what you make of that when you have been seeing, what's been coming out of the current counteroffensive and whether you might share that assessment.
Yes, so very interesting. The US intelligence world has been fairly realistic since the start, the military intelligence world, that is, led by General Miley, their chief of staff. And I agree, insofar as we can identify what the Ukrainian objectives were, and we didn't know that, we don't know it, nor should we. It looks as if what they're saying is the Ukrainians won't reach Melitopol on one of their main axes of advance. And I think it's fair to say that they won't. Ukraine's been pretty badly served, I think, by advice from certain parts of the West in terms of media. Their generals have always been pretty clear that this is going to take a long time, that in their words to me, this is going to be a series of blows over a long period of time. And the problem is, from our perspective, I suppose a lot of people have been saying that they'll be in Crimea by Christmas, or even in one case by the end of August. They won't. This is more the First World War than the First Gulf War. It's bite and hold, so really difficult, it's hard, and it will require strategic patience.
I'm wondering if you can perhaps share your opinion right now and in your assessment, because I mean, we always hear the Ukrainians asking for more equipment from the West, from their partners. In your assessment, what more does Ukraine need right now, not in 2024, but what does it need right now in order to make more effective gains?
Ammunition, primarily. That's what they will say. Ammunition, ammunition, ammunition. And then there are also the connectives, the things that we don't think about. They need transport. They need logistics equipment. They need the less glamorous stuff. Of course, armor is great. But to be fair, the Ukrainians have plenty of that. And right now, it's not very useful on the line. And above all, I think what they'd say is we need mine-clearing equipment, expertise, and a lot of ideas about how they're going to break through these huge minefields and defenses. I think that's what the Ukrainians would say now.
Frank Ledvig, senior lecturer in strategic studies at Portsmouth University and a former UK military intelligence officer. Thank you so much for joining us to share that expertise and assessment.
Thank you, Sarah.
Let's cross over to Domitilla Saguamoso, a senior lecturer in security and development at King's College London. Domitilla, so it looks like Ukraine is finally getting the F-16 fighter jets it's been asking for, but not in time for its counteroffensive. If you were a Ukrainian military commander, would you say, why is it taking so long? Is it really not possible to deliver these fighter jets sooner, or is there something else going on here?
Well, I mean, the big question is why weren't there any preparations for Ukraine to have these F-16s this summer? In the spring, we knew there was going to be a counteroffensive, so already last year, preparations could have been made to train the pilots and and prepare the grounds. I mean, there are, of course, many challenges. This is a sophisticated plane. The argument that training would take quite some time, the risk that some of these planes would fall into enemy hands, and the idea that I heard many times that other kind of weaponry could replace, to a certain extent, missiles could replace the effect of F-16s. There was also the question of runways, from where would these planes be departing, and could these runways be easily sort of bombed by the Russians? So there were a lot of issues which logically made things kind of challenging. Also, the runways had to be prepared for F-16s. I mean, there were a lot of issues which, in my view, could have been overcome, and the whole effort should have been carried out much earlier. I think that there was this hope that the Ukrainians would sort of manage to pierce some of the defenses more rapidly by conducting sort of one big blow, but that would have entailed a significant high number of casualties. So the Ukrainians decided to revert to tactics that are maybe slower, but which may not involve so many high number of casualties.
Right. The Washington Post is reporting that the U.S. has revised down its assessment of Ukraine's counteroffensive, saying it now believes Kyiv will fail to reach its key goal. Pessimistic or the sobering truth?
I think it's very difficult to know. I think it's a bit from my point of view, it is pessimistic in the sense that I think in the long run there is a possibility if Ukraine gets the right weaponry for it to continue advancing. They are advancing. If you read reports, for example, from the Institute for the Study of War, they show in quite some detail how they are making advances near Bakhmut and also in the western Zaporizhia Oblast, and they're also trying to advance further south of Robotine towards Tokmak and then towards Melitopol. It's a long way. If you look at the map, we see that the distances are quite long still, but there are advances that are being made. So it's a question of patience. And I think that if the West was ready to continue providing with significant weaponry to Ukraine, then, this piercing could take place because Russian forces are starting to feel, the challenges of these advances. And also the Ukrainians have been hitting also behind enemy lines, and trying to destroy lines of communication, supplies, ammunition depots. And all this has an impact. I think that it depends a lot what is our time frame. And if the Americans were hoping that by the autumn, the Ukrainians were reaching already the Sea of Azov and Berdyansk and Mariupol, this is certainly not going to be the case. So in that respect, the assessment that is provided by the Washington Post is probably correct. It's not going to happen in the timing that we were all hoping. But my assessment is that this is not impossible if we are patient and we provide the Ukrainians with significant amounts of support. We know, if I may say just one final point, that the Ukrainians have to be careful in terms of manpower. They cannot expend significant numbers of manpower because they don't have such high numbers. So it also makes sense that their approach is more careful when they are trying to advance. And this may imply that sometimes it's slower than sort of one big blow, as maybe the Americans were expected.
Okay, we'll have to end it there. That's Domitilla Sagomoso. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.